This might be the most ornate beer bottle in the world, and it only costs a couple of quid. Let's get into it. Hello and welcome back to the channel, and yes, today I'm taking a look at this very interesting looking bottle of beer. It's, as far as I can tell, a generic lager. It's called Lucky Buddha Beer and is manufactured, produced, bottled, the lot in China. This is definitely the first Chinese beer I've ever reviewed, and I think it's probably the first one I've ever actually experienced in terms of a beer that's been actually made in China. I mean, there's no getting away from it. The interesting thing about this beer is the bottle itself. It's got the Lucky Buddha on the front of it. It's super ornate, super interesting. This is a 330ml bottle, and I don't know if you can see on the back there, it does say it is officially imported to the UK. So this is kind of available somewhere. I got this from Beers of Europe. I don't know where else currently sell it, but it's a very interesting looking thing. I have no doubt most people pick this up because of the way it looks. I'll be honest, I picked this up because, well, I've never had a Chinese beer. I just thought it was interesting to see how stuff from that part of the world actually is in general. And yeah, the fact that it comes in a very novel bottle, well, that's just a plus. Although I have to say, I might keep that, like the empty bottle, because it is interesting, if nothing else. Right, let's get straight into this. Just before we do though, this is, as I said, a 330ml bottle. It is at 4.8%, so it's not a strong lager, but it's certainly not a weak one either. It's a decent ABV for a run-of-the-mill lager. I say run-of-the-mill, I'm making an assumption. It only cost me £2.50-ish from Beers of Europe. I'm sure if it was a widely imported thing, it'd be even cheaper. So let's get into this. Oh, and for reference, on the cap it says best before is the 28th of June this year. I'm currently in the very end of February. On opening that, it smells skunked already, but anyway, fingers crossed. Now then, in the glass, it has to be said, it looks good. It is not super heavily carbonated, but this isn't a nucleated glass. It's got a proper big, bright white foamy head on it. I mean, that's about as bright and white a foamy head as you get on anything, even regular lagers. The aroma in the room, though, is screaming mass-produced, just tatty lager. To be honest, it smells like Carling in here, which is not a great sign. I really hope it's better than that. It's got a kind of nice yellowy pilsner hue to it, but it will be interesting. But I say, aroma wise, just around the space is not particularly great. On the nose, that continues. It's got this like stringent, mulchy, sharp, almost like nettly hops. It's like, yeah, actually quite an assault on my nose there. It's not great. It smells like a Carling, like an old Carlsberg, like Foster's, like, yeah, it doesn't smell great, if I'm honest. But anyway, first time trying a Chinese beer. Let's give it a go. Cheers. Whilst it's certainly not as bad as it smells, it's not great. Now, don't get me wrong. It's not like it's completely separated from our generic lagers. It's very, very similar. You wouldn't pick this up on a blind test and go, where on earth has that been made? It's totally different. I don't get it. It's definitely got some kind of unique character to it. It certainly possesses a lot of similarities, as I've already said, with generic mass-produced lagers available in Europe, but there are some kind of individualistic and slightly nicer notes as well, so let's try and pick a few of those out. So initially, right on the tip of the tongue, sweet, bit of bitterness, light carbonation, bit generic, not a lot to talk about, but no real off notes either. Then, over the first third, proper green hop note comes in, and actually I'm wondering if all of the offness in the aroma was actually just stored in the top of the bottle, because whilst I wouldn't call it a great kind of pilsner or lager hop profile, it's really not bad. It's not offensive. It's a bit muted, but it's light, grassy. Yeah, it's pretty nice. Then over the mid palate, once get a bit of a hint of the relative cheapness of it. It's definitely got this kind of slightly astringent, mulchy, a bit past its best, overripe hop note. Very similar to something I said about the last beer review I did, which was that special Carlsberg beer. And like it had good bit, they kept that kind of signature Carlsberg hop profile. This feels very similar, and basically what that is cheap hops. It's not great, if I'm honest, but it could be worse. Then onto the back of the tongue, light, crisp. It's not biscuity malt. It's not, the malt's not really showing through. You kind of get a hint of it, but it's not enough to really go, oh yeah, it's this style, it's this type. It's just a hint of crisp malt sweetness, and that's all I can really use to accurately describe it. If I gave you anything else, it wouldn't be really representing the quantity of what I'm experiencing there. But it's nice enough, really. This feels like a very short, rapid review. There's not a lot of flavour in it at all, but I guess it is what it is. Then, on the aftertaste, it's crisp, it's refreshing, it's giving a freshness that you get, or I sort of say a refreshingness that you get with a lot of American light beer, particularly thinking like Bud Light, you know, rice lagers, that kind of thing. I know it's probably a generic kind of social trope to connect a Chinese beer with rice. I don't think it is a rice lager. It has not got that kind of thin, overly spritzy thing going on. It's just got a few hallmarks of it, so I'm not sure how they've achieved that. Maybe it's a blend, I don't know, but let's see if we can find out on the back of the bottle. It says Lucky Buddha Enlightened Beer. We'll talk about their branding more in a moment. Exclusively imported and distributed by LWC Drinks Limited in Manchester. It is brewed and bottled in China, and it is naturally brewed from malt, water, rice, hops, yeast with no additives. Okay, it wasn't a bad judgment on my part. It's got both malt and rice in it, so that explains it. It has got a bit of that thin Bud Light kind of vibe. Yeah, it's look, it's better than Bud Light. It's probably better than Carling, Carlsberg, Foster's in the UK, but mainly because the bottle looks cooler. Like the beer itself is nigh on the same. I do think the actual beer is slightly better, but I mean a few percent points better, nothing noticeable really. In the kind of situation where you're going to drink those beers and you drink this, you're not going to notice any difference. It is ultimately just some bang average lager in a very nice looking bottle, but it also was quite cheap, so I don't feel like it's overpriced. And especially if you like funky glassware, then well, you could turn that into your own cup or something by cutting the top off it. There are special ways to do that, look it up, don't take advice from me, don't get sore out on it or anything like that, but you get the idea. That could be an interesting thing to use it for, and ultimately not a very expensive thing to do at £2.50 or whatever it was that I paid for it. But I don't know, it's saved by the fact there's not a huge amount of flavour, I think, because I think if any of those were amped up, it would be really quite undrinkable. But it's not, it's refreshing, it's okay, I'm sure it's perfectly fine on a hot day. But the branding of the bottle, the way their branding is kind of interpreted online, I'll put some images on the screen now, but it's very kind of, it's very lifestyle based. It doesn't feel like they're in it for the beer, they feel like they're trying to sell you an idea, a cool thing, if you know what I mean. So it is very much more in the branding. But look, plenty of people do that. Brewdog have been doing it for absolutely years. Yes, arguably their beer was better at the start, but ultimately they are a branding company that happens to make some beer, at least in my view. So yeah, that's kind of it. It's fine. It's worth the price. No, it's not worth the price. Not when the German stuff you can get over here for £2.50 is outrageously good. So no, it's not worth it. But if you were in a pinch and you wanted something authentic, I don't know how authentic this is in terms of like, is it actually consumed much in China, or whether they make it there and export it all, I don't know. But if you went to a Chinese restaurant, your choices are Carling, Carlsberg or this, then actually I would go with that, but only just. So yeah, not really much to speak about with it. It is as generic as it comes, but well, I've had far worse, and that really is all I can say about it. So as always, thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like it. If you haven't already, subscribe if you will be so kind, and I'll catch you next time. Cheers.